Good morning, Sue Sishnik from Sue Sishnik Coaching and Training, and today, the 18th of June, is Neurodiversity Pride Day, which is personally very cool and interesting because of my own neurodiversity. And let me just say a little bit about that before I dive off. So giftedness is a form of neurodiversity. It's a form of different brain wiring. I should say what neurodiversity is. I've leapt in the deep end. Neurodiversity is the range of neurological types that humans can be, and different people have different ways, different ways that their brains work. And I'm one of those people. Now, there assumes, of course, that there is a normal or a typical, and that everybody else is a bit weird, which may or may not be the case. I'll leave that for your own decision making and judgment. So the neurodiversity, I'll give you a brief overview of my history. At school, a few decades ago, it was identified that I'm gifted, which means I have a really high IQ, which is very handy. I also identified at school that I was just weird. And I was an outcast kind of person at school and a bit of a misfit. So there was probably something more than just giftedness going on. And it took me until my early 30s before I really recognised what that was. And it actually took me until I basically went through the entire section in my local library on autism before I recognised that my brain is in fact autistic. And this was quite a revelation and also a liberation for me, because it suddenly explained a heck of a lot of how I experience and how I process and think about the world. And it meant that I had a different kind of label for just weird, and I could actually go and look up things that might be useful to me, like other people who identify as autistic or who have identified themselves as being autistic. And so that was one of the neurodiversity things I identified in my early 30s. Another one was highly sensitive, thanks to the book by Elaine Aron on highly sensitive people. And another one which I added to the list last year, thanks to discussions with a friend of mine who got diagnosed with this one as a child, is ADHD. And this explains why I just get so distracted all the time, but also work and really focus in on things. Now, why I'm telling you all of this is because one of the things that autistic people very often hear is, you don't look autistic. It's like, okay, thank you very much, but how does this tell you about what's going on in here? Yeah? No, I don't have to look anything. Autistic people don't have to look anything. It's to do with your brain wiring, and nobody has that. You don't get it tattooed on your arm, this is my brain wiring. Some people might do, that's up to them, but it's not that's a whole different ball game. Now, the thing about neurodiverse people is quite often we recognise each other, and you just pick up something in the conversation, you get a couple of hints, or you can just see something about how they are, or there's something just you just pick it up and you just kind of go, I think they might be a bit like me. Okay, let's go and explore this. And you then do that thing a bit just getting to know each other a little bit and sussing out, are they actually or not? And if they are, do they know about it? Can I just launch into conversation about it or not? And it's kind of like having a secret handshake, but not. And there's something about a sense of solidarity, and what I mean by that is that there's just this standing with one another. You just know what it's like to be neurodiverse in a largely, I was going to say less neurodiverse, but that does not make sense. What it's like to be neurodiverse around a lot of neurotypical people. You just kind of know what it's like to have a different outsider, non-conformist brain, and then you have a different kind of outsider, kind of non-conformist experience of the world. Some autistic people are really good at what's called masking. Now, this is basically acting as if you are neurotypical, acting as if, and hiding a lot of your autistic traits. So some people who are autistic get through to like their 30s and 40s and they've never even considered the possibility that their brain wiring is different. And then they find that they just can't cope with life because actually what's happened is so much stuff is built up and their coping mechanisms and their internal strategies for coping with stuff just reach breaking point. And I refer to this as autistic trauma because when you're living in a world which is mostly neurotypical people who are expecting you to behave in a neurotypical way and then you don't, and then you get a funny response for them in a kind of like, oh, you're not behaving like I expect you to, and that's wrong and that's bad. I mean, this is all kind of, it's never this overt, but when you get a lot of this a lot of the time, it does build up, like dust, basically. If you've never dusted for like 30 years, that's a lot of dust. And so people get to their 30s and 40s and the autistic masking just breaks down. You just can't cope with anything else. And then you have an autistic burnout, which is really not fun. So there's this sort of understanding between neurodiverse people of what it's like to be neurodiverse and to have these things going on in your world, in your internal world, and in your experience of the external world. Not that these two are actually separated anyway, but that's a different conversation. And there's this standing with one another that you kind of get each other on a different level. You may have very different expressions of neurodiversity. It might manifest it very differently in your lives, but you get each other in some sort of way. Now, statistically, about 1 in 30 people are thought to be on the autistic spectrum. And I say about and thought to be because we don't know. And especially amongst people who are women or of a more female presenting kind of type of autism, it doesn't get diagnosed because very often you're looking for a male presentation of autism. That's what's in the literature, and the women get not diagnosed. Or they get misdiagnosed as other things. And then you have misdiagnosis trauma because you're following a protocol and you're following a treatment path for a different kind of condition. And what's actually the issue and what you need assistance with and support with is understanding your neurodiversity and how that affects you and how that affects your world and your interactions with people and with the world. If you're being treated for something like bipolar or depression or anxiety, independent of an understanding of your neurodiversity, that's complicated and it's not going to help. So for neurotypical people watching along with this, just be polite. I mean, on a very basic fundamental level, if you meet somebody who's a bit odd and a bit weird, just be polite and just be kind to that person. Don't do that thing of standing on the sidelines and going, they're so weird, and pointing and like avoiding them and being a bit squiffy around them and that kind of stuff. Because, we kind of notice that sort of stuff and it sucks. And if you get it all the time, it's rubbish. So all I ask if you're neurotypical, and to be honest, if you're neurodiverse as well, just do your best to be polite and do your best to be kind. That's a kind of fundamental, basic level that I think we can all aspire to. And the neurodiverse people, I was just looking at my notes here, neurodiverse people have got this lifetime of being misunderstood and also very often a lifetime of misunderstanding themselves. To the point of feeling broken, to the point of feeling that there's something fundamentally wrong. And neurotypical people, please just don't add to that. Don't add to that. And neurodiverse people, we're dealing with it. Yeah. We're doing what we can to understand ourselves better. And for neurodiverse people to be updating what is quite often neurotypically conducted research in a neurotypical paradigm, which is very often rather adrift from the neurodiverse understanding of neurodiversity. And really, we're kind of like the experts on our own experience, to be fair. So to wrap up, I want to say that my journey to and through recognising my own neurodiversity, both what it was at school, the giftedness, and later on recognising autism, high sensitivity, and most likely ADHD, overall, it's felt like coming home. It's felt like coming home to myself and to understanding who I am and how I operate in this world. It feels like being the right way up at last. And it's all about finding freedom in self-acceptance. So, happy Neurodiversity Day.